The morning began like any other wedding day she had imagined in her dreams. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting the room in warm golds and soft pinks. Outside, the town was buzzing with excitement. Flowers were being arranged, horses were being fed, and people were moving about with the anticipation that only a wedding day could bring. She had spent weeks preparing for this day, not just in the careful planning of decorations and clothes, but in imagining the way it would feel to walk down the aisle, surrounded by family and friends. She had pictured the smiles, the laughter, the soft hum of music, the gentle hold of her partner's hand. She had pictured everything, and now nothing was as it should be. She woke up early that morning feeling a strange flutter of excitement mixed with a tiny tremor of nervousness. She smiled as she looked at the dress she had chosen months before, laying neatly on the bed. It was simple but elegant, made of soft fabric that felt like it had been created just for her. She touched the fabric gently, imagining herself walking toward the place where her life would change forever. She wanted everything to be perfect because she believed that this day would be the happiest day of her life. As she made her way downstairs to have breakfast, she noticed the quietness of the house. Usually her family was moving about, chatting and laughing, but this morning there was an unusual silence. She called out, but no one answered. Puzzled, she walked into the kitchen, expecting someone to be there, maybe bringing her tea or trying to calm her nerves with a kind word. The chairs were empty, the table was set, but there was no sign of anyone. Her heart began to beat faster. A strange unease settling in her chest, she looked at the clock and realized it was nearly time to leave for the ceremony. She began to feel a cold lump in her stomach. Something was not right. She grabbed her phone, hoping for a message, a call, anything that could explain the strange stillness. There was nothing. No message from the family, no word from the person she expected to see first thing that morning. Panic started to creep in. She tried to call the person she had been waiting for, but the phone rang endlessly and then went to voicemail. Each ring felt like a small hammer against her heart. She walked outside, hoping to see familiar faces, hoping to find someone who could reassure her that this was all a mistake. But the street was strangely quiet. The neighbors were there, some hanging laundry, some talking in hushed voices, but none came forward to greet her. She could see the decorations, the flowers that were meant to line the path to the ceremony, the ribbons fluttering in the wind, and the chairs arranged neatly. Everything was in place, but the one person she needed was missing. Her legs felt weak. She sat on the steps of the porch, trying to collect her thoughts. She could hear the faint sound of a horse's hooves in the distance, a reminder that life was moving on around her, but she felt frozen. She could not understand how it had come to this. She had trusted, she had hoped, she had believed in the love she thought was real, and now she was left alone on what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she did not let them fall yet. She tried to convince herself that this must be some misunderstanding, that the person would come running, apologizing, explaining everything. She imagined the door opening, the familiar face smiling sheepishly, holding out a hand. And all of this would be a mistake, just a small bump in the perfect day. But deep down, she knew that was not going to happen. The minutes stretched into an hour, and with each passing moment, the hope that she had clung to began to slip away. She went back inside, feeling the weight of the silence pressing down on her. She walked into the room that had been prepared for her to get dressed, and she looked at herself in the mirror. The reflection staring back was someone she barely recognized. The face was pale, the eyes red from holding back tears, and the shoulders slumped under the invisible burden of heartbreak. She tried to straighten, to make herself look composed, but the reflection only reminded her of the emptiness she felt inside. The phone rang again, startling her, but it was not the voice she wanted to hear. It was her friend calling to ask if everything was all right, confused about the absence of her fiancé. She could not speak at first, just shaking her head, unable to explain the emptiness and confusion that filled the room. Words felt useless, incapable of expressing the weight of abandonment that settled over her. She moved to the window, watching as the town went about its business. As life continued outside while her world had stopped, the flowers swayed in the breeze, the ribbons danced in the sunlight, and she felt invisible, as if she were standing behind a glass wall, unable to reach the life that was supposed to be hers. The thought that she might have been left intentionally, that everything she believed in might have been a lie, filled her with a deep, aching sorrow. Hours passed. She wandered from room to room, touching the furniture, the photographs, anything that reminded her of normalcy, anything that could anchor her in a world that now felt unreal. She tried to remember the good moments, the promises made, the laughter shared, but even those memories were tinged with the bitter taste of betrayal. She sank onto the floor in the corner of the room, hugging her knees to her chest. Feeling the tears she had held back finally fall free, her mind replayed every conversation, every smile, every tender word, searching for signs she had missed, trying to understand why she had been abandoned. She felt anger rising, sharp and bitter, but it was mixed with an overwhelming sadness that left her feeling hollow. The room, once filled with the anticipation of joy, now seemed to close in on her, each shadow a reminder of the emptiness she felt. Evening approached, and the golden light turned to soft gray as the sun dipped behind the mountains. She could hear the faint sounds of people leaving the ceremony, laughter and music drifting in the distance, reminders of the life she had been denied. The thought that she had hidden away while the world celebrated without her made her feel even smaller, even more alone. She wrapped herself in a blanket, sitting on the floor, wishing for the comfort of a friend, the presence of someone who could tell her that it would be all right. She realized that she could not face anyone yet, could not explain the pain, could not let anyone see the brokenness that had taken over. She retreated further into the room, closing the curtains, shutting out the world, and letting herself disappear into the shadows. She did not move for hours, just breathing, listening to the silence, letting the grief wash over her in waves, and in that silence, she began to understand that something in her life had changed irrevocably. The future she had imagined, the life she had planned, had been taken from her in a single morning. Yet even in the depths of heartbreak, a small spark of resilience lingered. She did not know what would come next, did not know how she would rise from this pain. But she knew that hiding away was the only way to protect the fragile hope that remained. Inside her, she drifted in and out of thought, sometimes imagining herself escaping, sometimes imagining herself fighting back, but mostly just feeling the emptiness of a day that was supposed to be filled with joy. Outside, the stars began to appear one by one. She watched them from her window, wondering if there was anyone out there who could see her pain, who could understand her loneliness. She did not move yet, did not make a sound, just held herself and let the world continue. Without her for a little while longer, the night felt long and endless as she sat alone in the quiet room, staring out of the window at the stars that sparkled faintly against the dark sky. The world outside seemed calm and ordinary, while inside her heart was heavy with confusion and sadness. She wondered if anyone even cared about the hurt she felt, if anyone noticed the empty space where her happiness was supposed to be. The silence in the house was deep, almost like it pressed against her chest. Making it hard to breathe in the distance, she heard the soft sound of hooves on the ground. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, the faint echo of life in a world that had moved on without her. But then she saw the figure of a man on a horse, riding slowly through the fading light. He was tall and strong, with a presence that seemed calm but powerful. Something about the way he moved, steady and deliberate, made her heart flutter with curiosity and a little fear at the same time. The horse came closer and he stopped near her home. Looking up at the window where she had been hiding, she felt a strange pull in her chest, as if his eyes could see the sadness she tried to hide. She hesitated, unsure if she should go to him or stay hidden. She had been hurt so deeply that the thought of trusting anyone felt impossible. But there was something different about him, a warmth in his eyes that made her feel a little safer than she had felt in ours. He dismounted slowly, the horse shifting beneath him, and walked toward the porch. His movements were careful, respectful, as if he understood the fragility in the air around her. He did not speak at first, only stood there, letting her see him clearly. She could see the lines of experience on his face, the kind of strength that comes from living a life close to the land and close to honest work. There was no rush, no urgency, only the quiet patience that made her heart pound. Finally, he spoke softly, a voice that seemed calm and steady in contrast to the storm inside her. He asked if she was all right, if there was anyone with her, if she needed help. She wanted to shake her head, to tell him that nothing could be done, that she was trapped in her heartbreak. But the words would not come. Instead, she only looked at him, her eyes wide. Searching for something that she could not name, he offered a simple gesture. A hand held out, not demanding, not insisting, just there if she wanted it. She felt a flicker of hope, a small spark, that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to escape the pain she had been carrying alone. She did not move immediately, but something in the way he looked at her, the quiet sincerity, gave her courage. She took a small step forward, then another, until finally her hand touched his and he helped her down from the porch gently. As if she were the most fragile thing in the world, they walked together to the horse, and she climbed carefully into the saddle behind him. The warmth of his back, the steady rhythm of the horse beneath them, the quiet sounds of the night around them, all combined to create a feeling she had not felt in months. She felt the first stirrings of relief, the tiny beginnings of hope that maybe the world could still be kind. She held on tightly, not just for safety, but for the reassurance that she was not entirely alone as they rode through the quiet streets. The lights of the town fading behind them, he spoke again, telling her that she did not need to explain or apologize for anything. He understood that life sometimes brought unexpected pain, and that the important thing was to find a place of safety first. She listened, the words soothing her in ways she did not expect. It was strange to hear kindness and care from someone she had just met. But it felt like a balm on her wounded heart. The journey took them beyond the town, out into the open country where the air was fresh and the night was filled with the sounds of crickets and the soft rustle of leaves. She had forgotten how it felt to breathe deeply, to feel the wind on her face without the weight of sadness pressing down. The world seemed wider, bigger, and for the first time that day, she felt a sense of possibility. He guided her to a large ranch, a place of open fields, wooden fences, and wide skies. The land was alive with animals, the gentle lowing of cattle, the soft neighing of horses, the occasional rustle of a fox or deer moving through the brush. It was a world far removed from the streets and windows of her small town, a world that felt honest and real. And she could feel the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. He showed her to a small room in the ranch house, clean and simple, with a bed and a chair and a window that looked out over the fields. He told her she could rest there, that she could stay as long as she needed. There was no pressure, no questions, only the quiet offer of shelter and safety. She felt tears welling up again, but this time they were not just tears of pain. They were tears of relief, of recognition that someone cared enough to help without expecting anything in return. She spent the first few hours just sitting by the window, watching the stars move slowly across the sky, listening to the gentle sounds of the ranch. Every so often, he would bring her a simple meal, leave it at the door, and retreat without a word. It was a strange kind of kindness, unobtrusive yet deeply comforting. She felt her heart start to open, small crack by small crack, letting in the possibility that maybe her life could change, that maybe the darkness could lift. The nights were quiet, but not lonely, because she knew he was nearby. She could hear the soft creak of the house settling, the low murmur of animals, and sometimes his voice calling out to check if she was all right. The simple presence of another human being, steady and caring, was more powerful than she could have imagined. She had spent so long alone with her grief that she had forgotten how much a quiet, caring presence could soothe the soul. Days passed slowly at first, but each day she felt a little stronger, a little more like herself. She explored the ranch, learning the paths through the fields, the habits of the animals, the quiet routines that gave life a rhythm. He never forced her to do anything she was not ready for, never judged her for the tears that still came or the moments when she felt lost. Instead, he offered gentle guidance, teaching her the ways of the land and the simple joys of work done with care. She began to notice small details that made her smile. The soft nuzzle of a horse, the way the sunlight played across the fields in the morning, the smell of hay and earth and fresh water. These were ordinary things, but in the midst of her heartbreak, they felt extraordinary. For the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of belonging. sensed that she could be part of a world that was kind and steady. The rancher did not speak much of his past, nor did she ask. The connection they shared was quiet, built from shared moments rather than words. He taught her that kindness did not always come with conditions, that trust could be rebuilt slowly, and that life, even after betrayal, could offer moments of beauty and hope. Each day, she felt a little more like herself, a little more able to imagine a future beyond the pain she had suffered as the sun set each evening, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. They would sit on the porch in silence, watching the world around them. Sometimes they spoke in quiet tones, sharing small stories or observations. But mostly they just sat together, letting the presence of the other be enough. She realized that she had never felt such calm, such reassurance, and it was a feeling she cherished deeply by the time the moon rose high and the stars filled the sky. She felt a gentle shift within herself. The despair that had weighed so heavily began to lift, replaced by a cautious hope that she had not felt since that morning. She did not know what the future held, but she knew that for the first time in hours, she felt safe, seen, and understood. The rancher had not solved all her problems, had not erased the pain, but he had given her the most precious gift she could receive after heartbreak: a place to rest, a chance to heal, and the knowledge that she was not alone. Days on the ranch passed slowly, but filled with small moments that made her heart feel lighter. Each morning she woke to the soft light spilling over the fields and the low sound of animals stirring. She had learned to enjoy the rhythm of life here, the work of feeding the horses and cattle, cleaning the stables, and walking the paths that wound through open fields and gentle hills. It was a hard life, but it was honest and grounding, and it gave her a sense of purpose she had not known. She moved carefully at first, unsure of what she could do or what she was allowed to do. The rancher watched her closely but quietly, offering help only when it was needed, allowing her to make her own mistakes and learn from them. She appreciated this deeply. No one here demanded perfection or judged her for the pain she had carried. She could work at her own pace and begin to feel a part of something larger than herself. In the mornings, she would feed the horses, brushing their coats and checking their hooves. They responded to her touch, nuzzling her gently and following her lead. It was simple work, but it taught her patience and responsibility. She realized that caring for another living being could ease some of the ache she had felt in her own heart. As she learned the routines of the ranch, she began to feel the tension in her body soften. The tight coil of sadness loosening just a little each dia. The rancher worked beside her at times, showing her how to handle the animals safely, how to repair fences, how to tend to the land so that it could thrive. He was patient and encouraging, never raising his voice, never making her feel small or incapable. She found herself watching him closely, noticing the careful way he moved, the way he seemed to understand the land and all its creatures without forcing anything. There was a quiet strength about him that comforted her. Sometimes they would ride together across the fields, the wind in their hair, the horse beneath them moving steadily. She would hold on to his waist, feeling the warmth of his presence, and allow herself to relax in a way she had not been able to for months. The wide open spaces reminded her that there was a world beyond the heartbreak, that life could still be beautiful and filled with small joys. She laughed softly at the horse's playful antics, and each laugh felt like a drop of water in a parched place inside her heart. Meals were simple, but satisfying. The rancher would prepare something for her or leave it ready on a table in the small room she stayed in. They ate together sometimes, mostly in silence, but the silence was comfortable, filled with understanding rather than emptiness. She realized that she could be herself here, without pretense or fear. She could allow herself to feel, to be fragile, to heal one afternoon. As they were mending a fence together, he spoke about the land, the history of the ranch, and the work that went into keeping it alive. He did not speak about himself much, but she felt she understood him through his actions, through the care he gave to every task and every creature. She began to feel a deep respect for him, a quiet admiration for the way he lived his life. He did not try to impress her with words, only with honesty and hard work. She began to help more confidently, learning to ride alone, to lead the animals to pasture, to handle the daily tasks with care. Each small success gave her a sense of pride she had not felt before. The work grounded her, reminded her that she was capable of more than she had imagined. Her heart, still tender, began to open a little more each day to the idea that life could be gentle and rewarding again. Evenings were the hardest. When the memories of the abandoned wedding and the pain of betrayal would return, she would sit on the porch, watching the sunset, feeling the sadness wash over her in waves. Yet she noticed that the waves became smaller over time, less overwhelming, as if the land and the quiet company of the rancher were helping her to regain her strength. She felt tears, but they were cleansing. Not just expressions of hurt, there were quiet conversations as well. Moments when she shared small pieces of her life. Little stories from her childhood, memories of her family. Moments she had held close to herself. He listened without interruption, without judgment, giving her the space to speak and the comfort of being heard. She realized that trust could be rebuilt slowly, that it did not need to come all at once, and that she was learning to feel safe with someone again. One day, she discovered a hidden path that led to a small stream. She went there alone, feeling the cool water on her fingers, the soft earth beneath her feet. It was peaceful, a place where she could think and dream quietly. She sat by the water, watching the sunlight dance on the surface, and allowed herself to imagine a future where she was happy again. The simple act of dreaming felt like a miracle. After so much pain, the rancher sometimes joined her by the stream, bringing water for tea or a small snack. They would sit together, watching the water flow, listening to the birds and the rustle of leaves. Words were not always necessary. The presence of another human being who cared, who offered kindness without conditions, was more valuable than anything she could have imagined. Gradually, she began to smile more, to laugh more, to notice the beauty around her. She learned the songs of the birds, the patterns of the clouds, the rhythms of the animals. Life was slow and steady here, and she found herself growing stronger in ways that she could not fully explain. Each day brought a small victory, a small reminder that she could survive, that she could thrive. She began to understand the importance of patience and endurance, of working with the land rather than against it, of listening to the quiet wisdom in the world around her. The rancher became a guide, not just in the practical tasks of ranch life, but in showing her how to move gently through the world, how to care, how to trust herself again. Her sleep improved, filled with dreams that were not haunted by betrayal but by hope and possibility. She woke each morning with a sense of purpose, ready to face the day and the work it held. She felt stronger, more capable, and the weight of the heartbreak that had once consumed her began to lift, replaced by a cautious optimism that life could still be kind over time. She began to notice the small ways she and the rancher connected. A glance, a shared silence, a word spoken at just the right time. She felt the first hints of companionship, of trust, and perhaps even something deeper, though she did not name it yet. The bond was quiet, built on respect, understanding, and shared moments. But it was growing steadily, and naturally, she realized that she was not the same person who had hidden away on her wedding day. She had been broken, but she was healing. She had found a place where she belonged, where she could be herself, where the land and the quiet presence of another human being gave her a chance to rediscover joy. She knew that her heart would still be tender, that the past could still bring sadness, but she also knew that she was capable of finding happiness again in the world that had seemed so cruel only weeks before. As the seasons began to change, she could feel the warmth of the sun and the coolness of the evening air in ways that mirrored the growing balance within her. Life on the ranch was not perfect, but it was real, honest, and sustaining. She had learned the importance of small victories, of quiet moments, of care and patience. She had learned that she could survive heartbreak and find a place where she could breathe and feel safe. She began to see the ranch not just as a place of work, but as a home, a sanctuary, a space where she could grow and rebuild. The animals, the fields, the simple rhythms of the day all became part of her healing, and the rancher, quiet and steadfast, remained a presence she could trust. A companion who offered understanding without expectation. By the end of her first full month on the ranch, she could feel a shift in herself that was undeniable. She moved with more confidence, smiled with more ease, and carried a sense of peace that she had not known in months. The pain of her abandoned wedding day was still there, like a shadow at the edge of her vision, but it no longer defined her. She was learning to live again, to find joy in the simple, steady life of the ranch, and to trust in the kindness of the world and the people in it. Time on the ranch continued to move at its own rhythm, slow and steady, and she found herself becoming part of it in ways she had never imagined. Each morning she woke to the gentle sounds of animals and the soft light filtering through the windows, feeling the comfort of knowing she was not alone. She had learned to navigate the chores, tending to the animals and the land, moving through the tasks with growing confidence and ease. The once overwhelming work now brought a sense of accomplishment and calmed. The bond between her and the rancher deepened, not through grand gestures or words, but in quiet moments shared together. They would ride the fields in silence, feeling the wind on their faces and the steady rhythm of the horse beneath them. Sometimes he would glance at her with a small smile, a reassurance that she was doing well, that she was safe. She found herself smiling back, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Feeling she had not known in months, they worked side by side, repairing fences, moving animals, and caring for the land. Each task became a shared experience, a lesson in trust and patience. She learned to rely on him without fear, and he learned to understand her without needing to question. Their connection grew naturally, like the slow, steady growth of the fields around them. It was not rushed, not forced, and it allowed her heart to open slowly, carefully. In ways that felt safe, the rancher showed her how to care for the animals with respect and gentleness. She learned the importance of watching closely, of listening to the sounds and movements of each creature, and of responding with patience and understanding. The work became almost meditative, a way to quiet her mind and soothe her heart. She began to see herself not just as someone who had been hurt, but as someone capable of nurturing, protecting, and giving life. Evenings were filled with quiet reflection. She would sit on the porch watching the sun dip below the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The rancher would sometimes join her, bringing a cup of tea or a simple meal, and they would sit together in silence, the world around them alive and peaceful. The presence of another person who cared, who offered support without expectation, became a balm to her spirit. She began to share more of herself with him, telling small stories of her past, the things that had shaped her, the moments she cherished. He listened with patience, never interrupting, never judging. She found comfort in his quiet understanding, in the way he acknowledged her pain without dismissing it. It was a gentle reassurance that she could be herself, that she could trust again. The animals seemed to sense the changes in her. The horses nuzzled her hand, the cattle followed her lead, and even the smallest creatures seemed to respond to her presence. She felt a sense of belonging that she had never known in the town she had left behind. The ranch, the land, and the life she shared with the rancher became a place where she could heal, grow, and rediscover joy. One afternoon, they rode to a nearby hill that overlooked the valley. The view was breathtaking, the fields stretching out endlessly, the rivers catching the sunlight like ribbons of silver. She felt a sense of awe and peace, realizing that life was larger and more beautiful than she had ever imagined. The rancher stayed close, offering quiet guidance, but allowing her to take in the moment fully on her own. She felt a connection to the land, to the world, and to the man who had brought her here. Days turned into weeks, and she noticed subtle changes in herself. She moved with more confidence, laughed more easily, and allowed herself to feel happiness without guilt. The memories of her abandoned wedding day were still present, but they no longer controlled her. She could think of them without being overwhelmed, and she could imagine a future that was not defined by betrayal, but by resilience and hope. The rancher became a constant presence, his steady support and quiet understanding a foundation she could rely on. They did not rush their conversations or their relationship. They allowed the connection to grow naturally, built on shared experiences, mutual respect, and the gentle understanding of each other's hearts. She found herself trusting him in ways she had not trusted anyone in a long time. One evening, as they worked to gather the animals for the night, a sudden storm rolled in from the hills. The wind whipped through the fields, and the rain fell in heavy sheets. They moved quickly, guiding the animals to shelter and securing the fences. The chaos of the storm was overwhelming, but working together brought a sense of unity and strength. She realized that facing challenges side by side created bonds that words could not express after the storm passed. The air was fresh and clean, and the fields sparkled with droplets of rain. They stood together on the porch, watching the clouds drift and the sunlight break through. She felt a deep sense of gratitude. It's not just for the beauty of the world, but for the presence of someone who had shown her care and patience when she needed it most. The rancher did not need to speak. The quiet understanding between them said more than words ever could, she began to notice. Oh, small gestures that made her heart flutter. The way he would adjust the blankets on the animals. The gentle way he guided her hand when she was unsure. The quiet smiles that passed between them during shared tasks. These moments were simple, ordinary, yet they carried a weight of care and connection that touched her deeply. She also discovered her own strength. She could ride alone across the fields, care for the animals, and manage tasks she once thought impossible. Each accomplishment gave her confidence and a sense of independence. The work of the ranch was hard, but rewarding, and it taught her that she could rely on herself as much as she could rely on others. The balance of self-reliance and trust in someone else created a harmony she had never experienced. 4 evenings continued to be filled with quiet reflection and shared silences. They would sit together, watching the stars emerge, feeling the gentle cool of the night air. Sometimes they spoke, sharing stories, thoughts, and observations. But mostly, they simply existed together, finding comfort in the presence of one another. She realized that love could be quiet, steady, and unspoken. Yet still deeply powerful, she began to feel a sense of hope she had not known in months. The pain of her past was still there, but it no longer defined her. She could imagine a future where she was happy, where she could trust and care for someone, where life was not ruled by fear and betrayal. The rancher had shown her that kindness, patience, and quiet understanding could create a foundation for healing and growth as the seasons changed. She felt her heart opening more each day. She learned to enjoy the simple pleasures of life on the ranch. The warmth of the sun, the sound of animals, the beauty of the land. She felt connected to the world around her and to the person who had guided her through the most difficult time in her life. The bond between them grew steadily, rooted in trust, respect, and shared experience. She understood now that life could be gentle and kind, even after heartbreak. The rancher had given her a place to heal, to rediscover joy, and to trust again. The connection they shared was not built on words or promises, but on the quiet presence of caring, the steady rhythm of work and life, and the understanding that sometimes the greatest comfort comes from simply being there for one another. She felt a deep sense of gratitude and a growing love that was patient, strong, and realized the days and weeks passed. She began to feel more like herself, the weight of heartbreak slowly lifting as she became part of the rhythm of ranch life. Each day brought new lessons, small triumphs, and a quiet sense of belonging she had never experienced before. The tasks that had once seemed daunting now became familiar, almost comforting, and she began to understand that healing could take time, patience, and gentle care. The rancher remained a steady presence in her life, offering guidance without pressure, support without judgment, and companionship without expectation. She found herself trusting him more with each passing day. It's not just with practical tasks, but with her feelings, her thoughts, and the tender pieces of herself she had long kept hidden. The connection they shared grew naturally, quietly, and with a strength that did not require words to be understood. One morning, she awoke to the soft golden light of sunrise spilling across the fields. The air was fresh and cool, and the world seemed alive with possibility. She took a deep breath, feeling the tension in her chest ease as she stepped outside. The ranch was quiet, the animals moving about their routines, and she felt a sense of peace that she had not known in months. She realized that this place, this life, had become a sanctuary, a place where she could grow and flourish. They spent the morning tending to the animals, repairing fences and preparing the land for the coming season. She moved with confidence, guided by the rancher's patient instructions and her own growing knowledge. The work was hard, but it was honest and fulfilling, and she felt a sense of pride in what she could accomplish. Each task was a reminder that she was capable, resilient, and ready to embrace life again. In the afternoons, they would sometimes ride together across the fields. Feeling the wind on their faces and the steady rhythm of the horses beneath them, she held on to him for balance, but she also felt a sense of safety and trust that went deeper than physical support. The world stretched out before them, open and wide, and she felt a freedom she had not experienced since before the pain of her abandoned wedding day. As they rode, they talked about simple things, memories from childhood, stories of the land, and observations about the animals. The conversations were easy, natural, and unforced, allowing her to express herself without fear or hesitation. She realized that communication could be gentle and meaningful, that trust could grow slowly, and that companionship could bring healing without the need for dramatic gestures. Evenings were often spent on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the hills and the sky change colors in breathtaking shades of orange, pink, and purple. They would sit quietly, sometimes sharing a warm drink or a simple meal, sometimes speaking softly, but mostly just existing in the shared presence of each other. She found comfort in the steady, reliable presence of the rancher, and she began to feel a warmth in her heart that had been absent for so long. She discovered new joys in small moments. The soft nuzzle of a horse, the gentle sound of water flowing in the stream, the sight of birds building nests in the trees. These ordinary details of life became extraordinary to her, reminders that beauty and wonder could be found even after sorrow. She began to see the world with fresh eyes. Appreciating the small blessings that had once gone unnoticed, the rancher also began to share pieces of his life, his experiences on the land, and the lessons he had learned through years of working closely with nature and animals. She listened intently, not just hearing his words, but understanding the values and wisdom behind them. She realized that the connection they shared was built on more than friendship or companionship. It was built on mutual respect, understanding, and shared experience. One day, they worked together to repair a section of the fence that had been damaged in a storm. The work required focus, cooperation, and trust, and as they moved side by side, she felt the depth of their partnership. Each nail they hammered, each post they set, became a symbol of rebuilding, not just of the ranch, but of her own life. She realized that healing and growth required effort, patience, and the support of someone who believed in her as they finished the work and stepped back to admire the sturdy fence. She felt a sense of accomplishment and pride. The fence was more than just wood and nails. It was a representation of strength, resilience, and the power of working together. She glanced at the rancher, seeing in his eyes the same sense of satisfaction and quiet pride. It was a shared moment, a connection without words, and it filled her with warmth. The nights were quiet but full of reflection. She would lie in bed, thinking about the journey she had been on, the pain she had endured, and the healing she had found on the ranch. She realized that the abandoned wedding day, which had once felt like the end of the world, had led her to a place of growth, understanding, and new possibilities. She had been left alone, but in that solitude, she had discovered strength and resilience. She also began to notice subtle feelings growing in her heart, feelings of affection and admiration for the rancher. It was not a sudden, overwhelming love, but a gentle, steady presence that made her heart feel lighter and her spirit more open. She found herself caring deeply for him, valuing his guidance, his kindness, and the quiet way he had helped her heal. The bond they shared had become a foundation for trust, respect, and emerging love over time. She became fully integrated into the life of the ranch. She could manage daily tasks independently, care for the animals with confidence, and navigate the land with ease. Each accomplishment reinforced her sense of self, her belief in her own abilities, and her understanding that life could still hold joy and fulfillment. She no longer felt defined by the pain of the past, but by the growth she had achieved. The rancher remained a constant, steady presence, offering support when needed, guidance when asked, and companionship without expectation. Their relationship deepened naturally, built on shared experiences, mutual respect, and the quiet understanding of each other's hearts. She realized that love could be patient, gentle, and unspoken, yet profoundly powerful in its own way. One morning, as they stood on a hill overlooking the valley, the sun rising and casting light over the fields, she felt a sense of clarity and peace. She understood that her journey had brought her here for a reason, that the heartbreak of her wedding day had led her to a life filled with possibility, growth, and connection. She felt gratitude for the rancher, for the land, and for the chance to rebuild her life. They rode back to the ranch together. The air filled with the scents of earth and animals, the world alive with quiet beauty. She felt a sense of completeness, a feeling that she could face the future with strength, hope, and love. The days of hiding away, of despair, and of feeling abandoned were behind her, replaced by a life filled with purpose, care, and companionship. As the sun set and the sky turned shades of orange and pink, she sat on the porch with the rancher, watching the world around them. She felt a deep sense of belonging, of safety, and of emerging love. The journey from heartbreak to healing had been long and difficult, but it had led her to a place where she could thrive, trust, and embrace the possibilities of the future. She realized that life was not always fair, that pain and betrayal could come unexpectedly, but that resilience, kindness, and connection could lead to renewal and joy. The rancher had shown her the power of quiet support, patient guidance, and unwavering care. Together, they had built not just a partnership on the ranch, but a foundation for a life filled with trust, understanding, and love. In that moment, she felt a profound sense of peace and gratitude. The abandoned wedding day that had once felt like an end had become the beginning of a new life, a life full of hope, healing, and the quiet, steady love that had grown between her and the rancher. She understood that her fate had changed, not through chance, but through the patience, care, and guidance of someone who had shown her the way back to herself and to the possibilities of the world. Around her, life on the ranch continued to unfold in quiet, steady ways, and she found herself waking each morning with a sense of purpose she had never known before. The work was familiar now, almost second nature, and she moved with confidence across the fields, tending to the animals and repairing fences with skill and care. Each day brought new tasks and small challenges, and with each accomplishment she felt her sense of self grow stronger. The pain that had once consumed her heart was now tempered by patience, and the satisfaction of work done with attention and love. The rancher remained a constant presence, his quiet support a steadying force in her life. She noticed the small ways he looked out for her, the gentle guidance, the unspoken understanding of when to step in and when to let her figure things out on her own. Their bond had grown deeper over time, built on shared experiences, trust, and the quiet strength of understanding each other without the need for words. She felt a warmth in her heart that she had not felt in a long time, a sense of connection that was steady and grounding. She began to explore the ranch more fully, walking the winding paths, learning the habits of the animals, and discovering hidden spots along streams and small wooded areas. Each discovery brought a sense of wonder, a reminder that the world could still be beautiful and full of surprises. She would pause to watch the birds, listen to the rustle of the trees, or watch the sunlight reflect on the water. And in these moments, she felt a profound peace that settled into her bones. The rancher sometimes joined her, and together they would explore, working with the land and sharing quiet conversations about life and the world around them. He spoke of the land's history, the challenges he had faced, and the lessons he had learned from years of working closely with the earth and the animals. She listened attentively, appreciating the depth of his knowledge and the calm way he shared it. She realized that trust could grow quietly over time, strengthened by shared experiences and mutual respect. As the days passed, she found herself laughing more freely, enjoying the playful antics of the animals and the gentle teasing of the rancher. Life felt fuller and richer than it had in years, and she began to imagine a future filled with possibilities she had once thought impossible. Each small victory, each moment of joy, reminded her that healing was a gradual process built on patience, care, and the support of someone who believed in her. The rancher encouraged her to take on more responsibilities, to learn skills that would make her feel confident and independent. She learned to ride long distances, tend to the animals on her own, and manage the daily routines of the ranch. With each new skill, she felt a surge of pride and accomplishment. The land became a teacher, and she realized that resilience could be nurtured through patience, hard work, and the willingness to keep moving forward. Evenings on the ranch were peaceful and filled with quiet reflection. She would sit on the porch, watching the sun sink behind the hills, and feel the gentle breeze on her face. Sometimes the rancher would join her, bringing a warm drink or a simple meal, and they would sit together in silence, sharing the comfort of each other's presence. These moments were filled with unspoken understanding, the kind of connection that did not need words to be meaningful. She noticed how much she had grown in confidence, not just in her ability to manage the ranch, but in her own sense of self. She no longer felt defined by the heartbreak of her wedding day or the abandonment she had suffered. Instead, she recognized her own strength, resilience, and ability to find joy and purpose in the world around her. She understood that life could be kind and fulfilling even after pain, and she felt a sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this. Placed the rancher, and she began to share more personal moments, not through grand declarations, but through simple gestures and quiet companionship. She noticed the way he looked out for her, the small acts of care, the gentle patience, the steady presence that reassured her in ways words could not. She felt herself opening up further, trusting him with her thoughts, fears, and hopes. The bond between them had grown into something deeper, something steady and enduring, built on respect, understanding, and shared experiences. One day, they worked together to prepare a section of the land for planting new crops. The work required focus, cooperation, and teamwork, and as they moved side by side, she felt a deep sense of connection. Each task, each small achievement became a symbol of rebuilding and growth, not just for the land, but for her own life. The steady rhythm of labor, the shared effort, and the mutual support created a sense of partnership that was profound and reassuring as the seasons changed. She experienced the ranch in new ways, observing the patterns of nature, the migration of birds, the blooming of wildflowers, and the changing colors of the trees. She found beauty in these small transformations. They reminded her that life was full of cycles, endings, and new beginnings. She began to see herself as part of these cycles, capable of adapting, growing, and thriving. Even after loss, the rancher continued to guide her, not by dictating, but by teaching her to observe, to learn, and to trust herself. He shared the knowledge he had gained over years, the lessons of patience, care, and understanding that came from living closely with the land and its creatures. She absorbed these lessons, applying them not just to the ranch, but to her own life, her own sense of self, and her relationships with others. Evenings were often spent sharing quiet moments by the fire, talking softly about dreams, plans, and observations. She felt a sense of belonging and comfort that had been missing for so long. The past, though still present, no longer overshadowed her life. She had learned to navigate the world with a balance of caution and courage, of patience and curiosity. She felt her heart opening to the possibility of love, trust, and companionship. Once more, the rancher and she continued to grow closer, their bonds strengthened by shared work, quiet conversations, and the simple act of being present for each other. She noticed the small ways he cared, the gentle touches, the thoughtful gestures, the quiet support that never demanded anything in return. She felt gratitude and affection building in her heart, a gentle, steady feeling that was comforting and reassuring. She also discovered more about herself, her own resilience, her ability to face challenges, and her capacity to find joy and purpose even after sorrow. Each day brought opportunities to test her skills, to push her limits, and to experience the satisfaction of accomplishing something meaningful. The ranch became a place of growth, a sanctuary, and a home where she could explore her own potential and embrace the possibilities of life. The connection between her and the rancher was unspoken yet profound, built on shared experiences, trust, and understanding. She felt secure in his presence, valued for who she was, and free to be yourself without fear of judgment. Their companionship grew into a partnership, a shared life of work, care, and quiet moments that held as much significance as words could ever convey. She watched the sun set over the fields one evening. She felt a sense of deep peace and fulfillment. The journey from heartbreak to healing had been long and sometimes difficult, but it had led her to a place of strength, joy, and connection. She understood that her life had been transformed, not by chance alone, but by the patience, care, and steady presence of someone who believed in her and supported her journey.